Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
Simon, nice to have you on the show.
Hey, Dan. Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we were talking, a little bit before I threw on the recorder, and you've been at this for a while, kind of sounds like in a consulting capacity, and have worked with lots of agencies, lots of B2B organizations, lots of SaaS. So before we get into, I think, the nitty gritty of a lot of concepts that you have that I think are really interesting, like return on luck, I think is an interesting idea. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you got here?
21 years ago, I did fall in love with the go-to-market question because I was working for a big consultancy. And when people were asking for how to enter a market, how to win in the market, how to stay in the market, budget was no issue. I had their attention. I had their emotional involvement. And if I would say, guys, we need 3 days more, we don't have the plan how to win against your competitor, they would say, all right, we stay here 3 days more. So I had their fully emotional, intellectual involvement, and I loved that. And that's why I did fall in love with those topics. So 21 years later, I'm still doing only one thing, helping teams with go-to-market, but we have niched down. Every 5 years, it became more clear who we are here to serve. And now we only work with B2B agencies, and we only solve the sales problem, the shortening the sales cycle and getting people out of the weeds, regaining them 10 to 14 hours per week because they are usually doing too much. So every 5 years, I learned more about who we are here to serve and what's our superpower. And I think that's an important thing to do as an agency owner. And I'm an agency owner myself. So in the end, we niched down to only agencies and only solving the sales problem. But it took many years, but we went sharper and sharper and more defined and more defined and more defined every year. And we have now only one offer, one product. And that is very, very targeted. So yeah, that's where I come from. And that was the process over many years.
Yeah, that's great. And there's so many jumping off points from there. And I think I want to start with your process of niching, right? Because we talk to lots of agencies, and that's what it's something we cover on the show all the time. That's what creates so much anxiety and hand wringing. We've had success over here, we've had success over there. This market's growing, this one's failing, right? So can you talk about your process of niching? Because it's interesting, because like if somebody was looking at the agency world, there's some things that are good about it, there's some things that are bad if you're looking at that as a niche. There's other industries, healthcare, right, that grow massively every year. So how did you decide that that was going to be the place where you planted your flag?
Everybody says, hey, pick your ideal client and then define it 5 levels deep and then run with that. But it's tough. Emotionally, most people are not ready. I was not ready. Like 3 years ago, a client of ours who is an agency said, Simon, why don't you just focus on agencies? And I said, not sure, the total addressable market. So you always find it hard emotionally. I did certainly find it hard emotionally to let go of so much potential. And then the rational idea comes, well, market size is too small. So the mind will find something to rationalize the emotion. The emotion is fear. We fear niching down. And I think there is good reason. So I don't put pressure anymore in the 90-day sprint. I don't put pressure anymore in week 1, having people decide their ideal client. We let them have some successes. And then in month 3, we actually ask them backwards of the 10 successes that you had in the sprint. Which 2 would you like to scale up? So tell me the name of the people that you had most fun and most profits and most impact with, and let's learn about them. And it turns out that is easier for people because as soon as they have 10 successes, it's easier to pick 2 and imagine, 20, those 2 becoming 10 times. That's easier to imagine than from a blank page.
That's really interesting because we've had a lot of conversations about niching, and none of them have focused on the emotional element of that decision, right? Much less any other that you can make. And to dig into that a little bit more, when people are scared of niching down, how rational is that fear? Based on your experience working with all these agencies, like okay, you've got to kind of handhold them through that fear, and they've got to see it themselves and get through it themselves. But if you could just wave that away, do you think it is better in a perfect world that people would just pick their niche and not get hung up on the TAM and all these things? Or to bring this to a question, how are you juggling the emotions versus the actual logic in terms of making that decision?
Yeah, you always need both, right? In coaching, so we are coaches. So of course, in an ideal world, we say, hey, pick your ideal clients, let's scale it. But in coaching, you always have to think both things. The technical side, that's what I just said. Hey, this is the right thing to do right now. That's the technical side. And we even have templates for them to do it in just half an hour. They can create their niche. So it takes 30 minutes on the technical side. But then there is also the adaptive side. How ready are they to enter the next gear? And for that, you need to be emotionally ready. So if I think of my own journey, my client saw that I am ready and told me, hey, why don't you just do agencies? But I wasn't ready because I wasn't seeing in front of me the total addressable market. What happened is that a couple months later, a recruiting agency, a marketing agency, a consulting agency, a UX UI agency, a BI agency, and a VA agency, and a creative agency, they all came in 1 week. And then I said, wait a moment, there are many more types of agencies than I categorized as an agency. So now for me, the market was totally different. Now I had a $1 billion market in front of me and a super easy targeting, because now you run whatever campaign you run, you say, hey, agency owner, I'm talking to you. Whoa. And I see billions and I see the easy message. Now I wasn't afraid anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about the emotion, and it's important to deal with that emotion. But now the fear was gone because I saw the targeting, I saw the message, and I saw the size of the market. Yeah. So when those three things come together, then it's easy, and then you niche down.
That's interesting. And I don't want to get too hung up on just the niche concept, so we'll move on in a second, but just to kind of dig into that a little bit more. Seth Godin, you probably know, has this concept of the dip, right? I'm not sure if he invented it, but it's the idea that you want to get through the dip because then your rewards are worth it compared to the work you put in, or you want to quit before the dip. The worst thing you could do is quit in the dip, because then you get the worst of both worlds. You've invested all this time and energy, but you don't get the dessert, at the end of the day. To kind of bring this to a question, I think with niches, what's really hard to know is, are you in the dip and do you have to work through it? Or are you in a niche that you just have no business being in? And I think what makes it hard is sometimes the logical side all makes sense, right? You could have the TAM that's big enough, they could have money, they could have pain. But to bring it to an example, I have a friend that is now pretty successful in a different area entirely. But for a while, he was building an agency and he wanted to serve rehab centers, like drug rehab centers. And all the numbers worked, everything played out rationally. But then he just found like these people are really, really hard to deal with. And if there's any agencies listening that have sold into rehab, like they know what I'm talking about. It's a really hard niche due to legal, due to just the personalities of the people running these centers. How do you deal with that? How do you know? It's a hard question, but how do you know if you're in a dip versus what they call a cul-de-sac, right? Where there's no good outcome for you personally.
I love the dip question because the dip is one of my favorite all-time books. Yeah. And it's such a tiny book, and few people know it. Yeah. And the question really obsessed me. Hey, how do I know when I'm in the dip? It's the most important entrepreneurial question: when to quit and when to stay. I call it when to keep rolling in adversary conditions. And so I was thinking about this question all the time. And what I created, and it's now in the Strategy Sprints book, is a weekly dashboard to deal with that question. How do I know when to pivot, when to quit an activity or a product? And how do I know when to persevere on an activity or a product? So we created the daily, weekly, and monthly habit. And the weekly habit is how to deal with the dip. The weekly habit is telling you one marketing number, one sales number, one ops number every 7 days. So it's a real-time dashboard that's telling you velocity. Are we doing the right thing at the right pace? If you're in the dip, you will see a slow progress, not a negative progress, but you will see a stagnation or a slow progress of some indicators, but you will have other indicators slowly progressing still. Then hey, just keep going. And then you have real dips, like numbers going down. Then it doesn't make sense to persevere. Then it's time to pivot. And so you just look at 1, 2, 3 weeks, you find your pattern, and you can decide in this month. Because small businesses, we're talking small agencies here, they don't have time to be persevering on the wrong thing. They will run out of cash. Sure. And that's why you have to know quickly if you are in the dip, is it time to persevere? Is it time to pivot? That's how we created the dashboard for ourselves. And right now, many agencies are using that and find it very, very helpful to answer that question exactly. Because depending on your runway, there is a limit on the time you can experiment. That's how we came up with the weekly dashboard. And there was another question in there. What if you find out that it's working, but there is no cultural fit? So we call it cultural fit. Basically, you don't like working with them. We have a checklist that's called the 36 sales gaps. And one of them is client has no cultural fit. So this would go into client has no cultural fit to us. Our culture and their culture doesn't fit. It's not a judgment. It's just they have a culture of working that's different than our culture of working. You will come across this situation. And then we have specific risk mitigation strategies that we have. And one option there is cut loose. Don't take them on, off board. But it's more nuanced in the daily work. But the short version is you can cut them off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that seems healthy. And I guess one thing that I think makes experiments difficult, especially in B2B, is the fact that sales cycles are long and the data size is small, right? Because our total addressable markets aren't like with consumer where you throw on some Facebook ads and there you go, you have your experiment, right? Or whatever it is. Instead of just asking how to do it, if you don't mind, is there an example you can share? It could be anonymous of a client that, either said, hey, I'm going to keep pushing through this dip, or I'm going to switch gears, and just kind of how that played out based on the dashboard and everything like that.
Totally. If we think of an agency in Los Angeles that's printed recently, that's Vetstech USA, and Sunny, who said, Simon, we're doing too many different things. We're working too much here for the profit rate. So in month 1, we have simplified their activities. And in order to simplify, we had to measure what's working and what's not. So we installed the sprint dashboard, and they quickly found out, of those 7 different offers that we have, there is one that's actually much more profitable than every other offer. And so we zoomed in for 90 days. We picked just that one offer, and we zoomed into that offer, did a bottleneck analysis of how they create value in there, and each stage, marketing, sales, operations, and then upsell or retainment. And we went deep mapping those processes and found the inefficiencies in there. And then we automated 85% of the boring stuff in there, or the repeatable stuff. Many parts of sales are sales admin, like entering the LinkedIn URL of that lead into the CRM. That's part of the 85% that's just admin and should be done by a software, right? And can be done by AI. So we started streamlining that part. Now they had only 15% of the sales work, and they had time freed up. They had 14 hours per week freed up. And with those 14 hours per week, we started selecting marketing channels and marketing activities. So he picked LinkedIn. We said, okay, what can you do on LinkedIn? And let's go to the value creation stage. What is it that your clients are telling us that they want more of? One of the systems that we installed with him is the client onboarding and the client satisfaction, asking them what's working, what should I improve, what else do you need, who else needs this? It's a continuous ask that tells us what to innovate. It tells us what to build next. And it also creates a referral engine because you are asking for referrals. Who else needs this?
Right. And just
so it's a very simple system of organic sales that we always implement with our clients. And when Sunny got that, he got the information that all of his clients needed help finding blockchain developers.
So this is a form that's online that goes to the client just digitally and they fill it out there, or how was that getting in front of the client?
Yeah, you can either call them. If you have a few clients, you can call them and ask them, or you have in the project an account manager or quality control person asking, or you can automate it as an email that asks them, or it can be a form, like a Google form, a type form, and you ask those things if you want to automate it. And the automated version can be a Google form or an email that goes out there, ask them those 5 things. And then you collect the information in a spreadsheet in order to tick it off. Okay, we implemented now, and we need to implement it next. With that information, and you say B2B sales cycles are long. Yeah, but your current clients can give you feedback in an hour. So we start always with the current B2B clients. And we learn from there. We use their exact words, and that becomes the next email. That becomes the next ad. That becomes the next campaign title. Their exact words. Because our philosophy is you just need one ideal client 100 times. So when they tell you, you don't need 100 clients, you need one client 100 times. So whenever you have one and it's working really well, and you ask them those questions, now you use their exact words to land the next 100 of them. You don't have to reinvent anything. You just scale what's working.
Yeah.
That's the strategy sprints method. And so the weekly dashboard gave Sunny that information. In the same week, because it was a real-time dashboard, we implemented the LinkedIn strategy, and he's still rolling the LinkedIn strategy, and it worked like a charm. He wrote us that his sales went through the roof because he just concentrated. And remember, month 3, we then niched down because now we have something that works. And so he niched down totally in month 3. He just writes 1 newsletter per week on LinkedIn. It's the 3 things blockchain you need to know this week. He's talking directly to his ideal target clients. His message became very simple. I'm the blockchain guy for everything you need to solve. And in California, everybody can refer to him. Oh, you need the blockchain guy, call Sunny. Easy to refer to him. So he has now affiliate partners because it's very easy to refer to him. So all the big sales problems solved: the sales time, the clarity of the message, the positioning, and how easy it is to refer to you.
The one ideal client 100 times is simple, but that's a really powerful idea. It allows you to condense so many things into one. I love that. So that's something I wrote down, and I'll definitely remember. Let's talk about shortening sales cycle, which has been a kind of a hot topic recently. How do you do that? I think there's lots of people listening that are like, well, I sell $50,000, $100,000 engagements. People have to fire their agency in order to hire us. It doesn't happen all the time. How do you shorten a sales cycle in that situation?
One of our joint venture partners is Google, and Google has some pretty good data about what people look for, what people want, what people buy. One of the recent insights was that the sales funnel is not as linear as we think. It's more bouncing off, and in the end, it looks more like a network of nodes where you have around 12, 13 nodes and 16, 17, 18 contact points. So you pass through those things in a different way, and then you forget about it, and then you get retargeted, and you come back, and then you get an email. And so how we used this information is, yes, we still create linear sales funnels, but we think in 16 to 18 experiences that we have to create in 2 weeks, ideally, because the B2B sales is still a 15, 16 contact points sport. But, in the old world, you had to fly there, have lunch with them, and that took you a year. In the new world, we can create that with a smart email sequence in 2 weeks. So if you download anything from our website, strategysprints.com, you will land into our email series. And I challenge you not to be very, very engaged in the first 12 days, because I will send you valuable stuff about the topics that you care about right now. One will send you to our YouTube channel. Hey, come to YouTube. I just created something for you. And so we will have one contact point on YouTube. The next one on LinkedIn. The next one, I share with you my sales checklist, my cheat sheet. And you can download it on Facebook. And so I will create in 12 days multiple moments of value. And without even realizing, you will have connected in 12 platforms to us. So when you now shut down your computer and you go, oh, enough working, let me relax. You take your iPad, lay down on your couch to watch YouTube. Ta-da! Guess who's going to show up? So this is how you can intensify, compress the time needed to create 16, 18 valuable experiences together. That's the beauty of technology. If we do it in a valuable way, so I'm literally sharing my stuff. And people say, but Simon, you're giving away strategic core IP. And I say, yes, but I'm also creating 16 valuable experiences. So it's fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that all sounds like a good thing to do to keep top of mind and to re-engage people. And I think you definitely could shorten the sales cycle. But I guess what do you do when you have an institutional barrier, right? Where okay, you have a champion, they're seeing your content, they've been on sales calls, but they're not going to drop $200,000 on a new agency until at least 6 months or a year, and then that keeps getting pushed out, right? How do you deal with that problem?
They might spend sooner if you can get 4 buyers to see the value. So let's think of their 4 buyers. You have an executive buyer, a commercial buyer, a technical buyer, and a user representative buyer, user buyer. And they might be 4 different departments or roles. Let me go in each one. The executive buyer, usually the CEO, they only care about one thing and they will not be super involved in that process. The only thing they ask is, will this increase market share? Or will it reduce sales time? Or will it keep retainment higher or churn rate low? That's the only thing that they care about. How does this affect our market share, our market positioning? So that's a pretty quick email, just 2 emails about that. You got one part covered. And so you're always thinking of all those 4 values because it's not one value. You need 4 value propositions for those 4 kind of people if you are doing big enterprise sales. But it can be, still a couple emails. The next email, you are thinking, the technical buyer. Technical buyer is thinking, is this upgradable? Like when we have twice the size of employees, do I need to switch? Or does this grow with me? The technical questions. Can I add seats? Is there a trap somewhere? But the technical side of things, features. Then you have the economic buyer and the user buyer. User buyer thinks, how does this apply into our everyday work? So, my people do this in the morning, and this is our culture, and this is how we decide here, and this is how we roll here. Does it fit our culture? Again, the culture fit. And then the last piece is the economic buyer. The economic buyer, it's usually the purchaser or a purchasing department. Their job is to not have emotions. They don't care about any of your emails. They only need one thing. They need to show to their boss that they got 5 to 10% off your price and that they have compared you to others. That's it. So make their life easy, give them the 5 to 10%, which means you put them on top of your initial offer anyways. You let them negotiate it away. They're fine. They're easy. The first 3 you have to win in your emails.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for going through that. And you're talking, about automation and this sort of thing. How do you deal with that diplomatically, right? Because sometimes you can over automate and send the wrong thing to the wrong person, in a situation where the stakes are high and you have a big deal on the line. So how do you handle those situations?
Yes. So most people would answer you, segment your list. I will not. I will say, write from your heart. So it's totally different. I think you can send an email a day. If it comes from the heart, they will thank you. And if you skip one day, they will go, hey, why didn't you email me yesterday? If it comes from the heart. And how does it feel like? When it's from the heart, it's personal. You are thinking about them, like literally thinking about them. Like we were thinking about 4 different questions that they have. If they feel that you are actually thinking about them in this accuracy, they feel seen. That's not a spam email. That's an email that is speaking to me. Thank you for that. And you're giving me that for free? Oh my God, I want to go out for lunch for you to give you something back. You just helped me take a decision, understand something, see something that I wasn't seeing, save time because you shared your checklist. that you obviously took years to build, and you just gave it to me in an email. You saved my time. We are partners now. So that's my answer. You cannot email enough, but there are bad emails and good emails. A bad email are most emails. Right. A good email is the one that you miss if it's not coming. If on that specific Friday, you go, oh my God, where is your email? I usually get this on Friday and I look forward to it and it wasn't there. Are you fine?
Yeah, which is funny because, we get spam and there's all this talk, is AI going to get rid of spam? Is Google going to figure it out and get rid? But the problem is it won't, because if you ask anyone to define spam, there's nobody that's going to have a workable definition for you. There's only one workable definition. And it reminds me of when I was in college and I was studying music and the professor said, define noise for me, and everybody rattled off definitions, and he's like, no, the definition of noise is any unwanted sound, right? The definition of spam is any unwanted content. So how do you know if something's wanted, right? So you send it. But so all we know is that there's stuff that people want, there's stuff that they don't, and there's bad and good, in that realm, right? So no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's incredibly useful way to frame this out. To shift gears a little bit, you have this concept called ROL, or return on luck. What is return on luck?
The term was coined by Jim Collins, and he was researching, why do some teams win and others don't? And I continued looking with this lens, with this question in mind. And when I see every day a dozen teams in the sprint program, I look at, why do some teams win? And sometimes they're competing for the same clients. So why do those people win over others? And if you look at that, it's the amount of experiments that they run per week. So some teams, they create the perfect plan for a month, then they execute and are surprised. Other teams, they make work small, they test the title, they test the image, they test things quick, and they already learn during the week. So come Friday, when we meet together for the dashboard review, sometimes they already pivot ideas. And so next week, they can test 2 new approaches. So it's a pretty mathematical thing. If you make work small and test frequently during the week, you can test 30, 40 things per month with a small team. Those teams win over people that do traditional project management, where you go planning, analyzing, refining, and then shipping. They lose. They always lose because they don't learn much. They're slow. They cannot react to stuff that comes up because they don't even see it. And they always forget the end user.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's also just kind of a muscle to be able to think in terms of experiments and run them and not get too emotional, either positively or negatively, based on the results. And I think that when the experiment is run just through a marketing dashboard, that's easier. It's harder when you're talking to people, right? And you have clients or you have prospects and you're getting feedback and all that sort of thing. So that's a really great way to think about it, though. Simon, kind of getting towards the end of our time, what are you working on right now? Like, what's the big project with your consultancy, and what are you excited about?
We are helping agencies right now navigate those very volatile months. We have recessions, stagnations coming up. Everybody's kind of fearful that the risk is high for them to stay in the game and to stay relevant. So what we're doing right now is everything that helps them fill pipeline. And one specific thing everybody is asking to print in front of them, we have the 11 sales steps. It's one of our core modules. We have 274 modules, but the core one is, how do you close when you are in the call? So it's a 2-call close in 11 steps. 5 steps in the first call, 4 steps in the second call, right? The first one is like a discovery call. Second one is closing. So it's a close in 2. And we have an 11 steps method that works like a charm, and everybody is printing it and putting it on their wall in front of them. So when they have the Zoom call, they literally look at it. So what I'm doing right now is I just hired today a designer to help me make it beautiful. And we will make it as a wallpaper for everybody so that they have it in front of them. And so that they win over the next 12 months, they will not just stay in the game, but they will increase the closing rate in their sales calls. And I'm getting the recording and I am going through the 11 steps and showing them exactly, look, you set the price before you explored the budget. You set the features before you uncovered and contrasted the pain enough. All these 11 steps have a reason why you do them in that order. If you just skip one, they will ghost you at the end. You will lose the deal. And so that's the most fun for me right now with this designer. How can we make it so easy for them to have it in front of them in every sales call? So that's what I'm building the next 3 days. And then we look at the sprint dashboard, and the sprint dashboard will tell me what to build next week. It's so simple.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a really great way to think about it too, is like, if you skip over these, you'll get ghosted and it won't be a mystery why, because that's usually how it goes, right? So that's great. Is that something that people can get publicly, or is that part of your program? And regardless of that, how can people, follow what you're up to and get in touch and all that good stuff?
They can get a lot of those things from the book, Strategy Sprints. Cool. It's on Amazon, published by Kogan Page. And if they want to talk to us and get our tools in their hands, etc., it's strategysprints.com. They can book a time with us and we can talk.
Awesome. We'll get all that linked up. And Simon, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll do it again before long.
Thank you so much, Dan, and keep rolling, everybody.